Hey, everybody, and welcome to episode number 80 of the Fantasy Fullback Dive. We're in season 4 here, brought to you by the good people of the Road Street Journal. We're your lead blocker. We are going to pave the way to fantasy glory for you. 2020 now? Is that the season that we're like approaching here? That's nuts. Once we're getting up to the 2020 season, that just seems a little ridiculous to me. And the fact is, we're in 2020 season. Tom Brady's still the quarterback of the New England Patriots. And still, they're probably going to go into the offseason the favorites, right? Wouldn't you say?
Always. It's my Patriots, baby.
Not always, but they're going to this year, you'd have to say. Sorry, I digress. I get a little distracted sometimes when we haven't done this. I'm, of course, your host now, The Truth Jones. With me, as always, the Wolf of Roto Street himself, wearing his one piece of RSJ swag. Just received uncomfortable news that CJ, the Salt Man's been hoarding the swag in his basement.
Yeah, ideally not using it as we discussed, cum rags for his pregnancy porn. We can only hope.
We got like 85% of the company's value wrapped up in that right now, and using it as a rag is going to reduce the value by at least 50%. Oh yeah. Anyway, we should have
there might be a market for used shirts.
We sell it right.
Yeah.
Dudes actually sell them on. It's like you can have this shirt new for $14.95, or
or coming to.
CJ's like spent a week with it for $6. Anyway, we're gonna get into. We talked last episode about fantasy winners and losers based on the draft. We went over the winners. We alluded to a lot of the losers, and we want to be men of our words. So we're gonna obviously go over some of the losers of the draft today. Based on the additions of people coming in better line, worse line. Is a running back going to come in that's going to completely eat away at the ground pie that you were hoping to have a sliver of? That's what we're going to get into today. But before we do, we're actually going to, tell you that we actually have a minor sponsor.
Yeah.
It's us, but I mean, it's not, so kind of. But, Sesame Street is brought to you sometimes by letters and numbers.
Of course.
Great show. And my son's just recently gotten back into watching Sesame Street. He was into it, then he wasn't. Now it's back. It's roaring back. Anyway, this episode is brought to you by one of our glossary definitions, and that, of course, is pig roast, a fantasy pig roast. And if you're not familiar with this term, well, that's because it's really our term. But we want this to become just kind of part of the lexicon that everybody out there is using. A pig roast in fantasy, that's when you own both the quarterback and the receiver of a pass, and you have like a guy that gets a touchdown. So you're double dipping, basically. You're getting points from the quarterback and the receiver. I mean, you call that stacking in daily fantasy. People do it all the time. But it's a pig roast. It's usually a wide receiver, but occasionally it can be a tight end or a running back pairing with your quarterback. You get that. And the example, in line to win my fantasy semifinals, Deshaun Watson and DeAndre Hopkins put me through an epic pig roast, resulting in a fantasy loss and me shitting pancakes for months after.
I knew that'd get you.
Yeah. No, pig roast, I mean, is when you get one. But what about, is there a variation of this? Is it just a bigger pig roast if they get multiple TDs?
Yeah, I mean, that's like where maybe they decided, let's switch sides. I'm going to take the mouth this time. You get the ass instead. Then there's also the variation. Let's say you had like the running back and the receiver and the quarterback, which if you had like Le'Veon Bell, Antonio Brown, and Big Ben, I mean, that used to be an epic. That's not even a pig roast at that point. That's probably just the fantasy gangbang, right? Like that's... Every orifice of yours is just getting penetrated if you're facing that, and you're penetrating every orifice if that's you doing that, the pig roasting.
If you're
there.
Facing that or not facing that, it doesn't really matter what direction you're turned. You're getting it from somebody.
Exactly. Some might call it an Eiffel Tower. It's got different variations. They might connect hands and form the tower above you, but regardless, there's nothing better than having the pig roast, and there's nothing that being worse
than getting pig roast.
Especially last year when it was like Mahomes and Tyreek Hill, and it's like a 90-yard pig roast. And you're just like, are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah,
I just went like a 30-point hit.
If you're anything like me, you're following the scores along, and you're like, all right, I'm up 8, blah, 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 blah. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, I'm down 21.
Right, exactly.
Because they just crushed you on that one play. And then to me, and I don't know if this is just me being negative or like feeling like I'm on the wrong side, it seems like when one of those happens, another one follows.
It always does, right? Yeah.
Like you're gonna give up a 90-yarder, and then it's like, oh, and here's another 75-yarder. That's great.
Right. Exactly. Tyreek Hill now has 210 and 2 touchdowns, and I have Mahomes too. So there you go.
that fucker Tyreek Hill. I mean, he's fun to talk about fantasy wise. Like just such an exciting guy to watch. I wish I didn't hate him so much.
I know
because he was was part of a great pig roast combo.
Probably the best out there. What do you think this year? Who would you say is the best pig roast to own?
Well, I know you're going to want to say Baker and OBJ probably.
Although
you've noticed there's already drama. I mean, he's already like basically been like sent home from practice, right? Like to get his head right.
What?
Yeah, like I mean, he like I heard he had to like
I missed
leave.
That one.
Not maybe it wasn't even practice. I feel like he went to like one practice and then the coach was like he's like away from the team like so he can get his head right or something.
No,
I heard that
really?
like yesterday. Yeah,
God.
look it up after we're done. See if
check it
and
out.
I apologize if I'm just making shit up, but no, I don't think I am.
That's scary.
But I mean, I know you're going to want to say Baker and OBJ. I would say that, you got like T.Y. Hilton and Andrew Luck. I certainly wouldn't put that at the top.
I mean, Watson Hopkins is pretty damn good.
My favorite
right?
is Watson Hopkins.
Yeah.
I don't know how much I believe in Watson. I love him. I really like him. I don't know. We'll see what happens with him. And I mean, Rodgers and Devontae Adams is.
Oh yeah.
That's solid. So I would say probably the best two are Hopkins, Watkins, potentially. That's my favorite, and then probably Rodgers. And Adams.
And that's a nice one too.
Follow that theoretically with OBJ and Mayfield.
Yeah, I think the Adams-Rodgers ones too, those are the type of ones that are so valuable because so much of Rodgers' scoring, probably like 20-30% of his touchdown passes went to Adams. It's very concentrated, whereas some of these offenses spread it out so heavily. Even like, Tyreek Hill, you never knew if you're going to get it. Every week you got a pig roast from Adams and Rodgers. So that's one of the safest, sturdiest. You're putting them on the spit at some point if you own those two.
Yeah, I'm with you. All right, I've heard we have a voicemail question.
We do.
Is that true? From Mad Money Mike?
Yeah, I try to remember how we used to play these, though. Is it through the phone?
You know what's crazy about that? Like that year, because I do that sometimes too. We'll go through a little stretch where like we don't do something for a while. Like there was a stretch when someone else was doing the sound and producing a lot of our podcasts, and so like I went through a stretch where it was maybe like 3 months where I hadn't done a podcast. I hadn't like done the editing and producing and stuff. Mm-hmm. And like keep in mind, I had done like 150 of them before that. And so I took like 2 or 3 months off and like I couldn't remember how to do it. It's like, like that never used to happen to me when I was younger. Like my kids, like they know how to do something. They never forget it. They know it just like it's like gospel. They learn it forever. With me, it's like now that I'm old, it doesn't matter how many reps I've had. If I'm not doing it all the time, I completely forget. And it seems like you're actually, even though you're a lot younger than me, you're suffering from the same malady.
Oh, I have the worst memory ever. It must have to do with that green stuff I sometimes
I was going to say, smoking like 2 ounces of weed a day.
Oh, come on. Not that much, Nat.
No, I know, obviously.
I think I've got it figured out, though.
Okay. Play it for us.
Well, we used to use my iPad for it, but that thing's been through the ringer. Lots of bad things have happened to that iPad.
A lot of bad things?
Yeah, exactly. Thankfully, I don't own the shirts in my basement. Let's put it that way. But let's all right. Let's listen to Mad Money Mike, a classic. I have no idea what he has to say, even.
Okay, bring it, Mike.
Hey, boys, it's Mad Money Mike. It's been a while. Certainly been a long off season for yours truly, losing in the fantasy football finals. Mm-hmm. Thanks to Malcolm goddamn Butler bringing back a pick six. Whatever. Anyways, need a ruling from you two experts on a little situation going down in my league. This is my big league, the highest stakes, and the commissioner is RSJ's own Jimbo Slice.
Oh, wow.
You're already in trouble there. I don't even want to know what the rest is, but we know Jimbo Slice is never up to any good, so what controversy is this going to be? Oh, I actually think I know what this is.
Do you think that of you, me, the Salt Man, and Jimbo, do you think he's the most reputable?
Yeah, because look at who he's compared to.
I think so. I think so.
Yeah, it's like being the fattest kid at fat camp. Like, good for him.
Or the skinniest kid at fat camp.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly.
Because I do kind of think, I was thinking the other day, like, if you had to, like, just say, like, well, this is the guy, this is the reputable guy, like, Jimmy would probably get it.
He's probably, but he's not reputable. Like, that's just goes to speak about
a sliding scale, though.
Yes, exactly.
All right, go ahead, Mike.
Hey, boys, it's Mad Money
shit.
Mike.
It's been
Mike. A while. Certainly been a long off season.
I didn't know it was going to restart on us. Hold on.
So this is Trakeoff, who's like,
on to the race.
He's like 30, but he's acting like he's like 70.
Oh, Slice. Now, as the league decides its draft every year by the Kentucky Derby, everyone randomly gets their horse selected. I got game winner, whatever, all is normal. But what would you know? Jimbo Slice gets maximum security. Certainly interesting that the commissioner would end up with the favorite, but whatever, on to the race. As everyone knows by now, the race was run. Maximum security comes in first. But wait, we got the damn challenge flag being thrown. The horse gets DQ'd. Certainly a roller coaster of emotions for young Mr. Slice, going from first pick to last, going from Saquon or Gurley down to Freeman, but whatever, fair is fair, or so we thought. Now, any person with a shred of dignity would just take the L, but now we have Jimbo ruling as the commissioner that he gets the first pick on the technicality. Oh, well, the first horse crossed the line is maximum security. I get first pick. Just an outrageous take from this tyrant grasping at this power. Would love to get your take on this as the experts of everything fantasy football and get your take on this oppressive dictatorship of Jim Jong-un.
You want to know what's funny about the very end of what he said? One of my good buddies, Jerome, who's the commissioner of my hometown league, also known as Johnny Goodtimes, we call him Jerome Jong-il.
Yeah.
So it's like, I wonder how many leagues there are that have oppressive commissioners that just get called some variation of the North Korean dictator. Anyway, so
of course.
Quick thoughts on this. I got to say, for me, and I didn't know this question was coming, and you and I have not discussed it beforehand. I have to say, I don't think that he should get the number one pick. I mean, I think the horse ended up I think they bumped him down to 15th or something.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, to me, Country House or Country Road or whoever the hell won it, that's the number one guy.
Yeah, Country House.
To me, you go by the official results. I mean, and I don't know enough about horse racing to know whether it was a good call or not. But I think you got to go by the official results, right?
100%. Yeah, this is pure dictatorship at its ugliest. Jimbo Slice, we expect better from you. This could be grounds for removal from the RSJ if I don't hear this is rectified the right way. I think it's embarrassing. I get that it was a technicality and all this, but the official ruling was he lost, so you got to accept it. And never mind the fact that I wouldn't necessarily want the first overall pick this year. There's no clear cut. Saquon's not the clear cut number one.
No,
in my opinion.
but he's going to get bumped all the way. It's not like he's going to get second or third.
I kind of like last this year though. If you can get Joe Mixon and Devontae Adams, get yourself a workhorse, or you could even go horse and get Mixon, Dalvin Cook, who we love, or whatever it might be. I like the talent this year.
I don't disagree that this might actually be a better draft position for Jimbo, but really what is at play here is his character.
Of course, you're right.
What is going on here? I just got through saying that he's the most reputable member of the four horsemen that make up the foundation of the RSJ. Is this going to hurt his reputability rating substantially? I kind of think it is.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, we're three other pathetic losers with no reputability at all, but we at least go with what happens on the field. We don't bitch and moan and make this type of sketchy move. No, I think Jimbo, is
Jimmy being serious? We should have him on the show next week.
I think we got it. Yeah, we got to,
because it seems like he might just be fucking with Mad Money Mike, because it seems like such a poor call. We should mediate. We should have them both
of them. Exactly. Yes.
Mediate. Yeah. I can mediate. I'm good at that.
We're gonna have a mediation. So, folks, this is not. We don't know the ultimate. This was about 2 weeks ago, and it just popped up that we had this. We have no idea how this situation's played out, but we will be mediating live on the next Fantasy Fullback Dive here. Cannot wait. That's going to be fantastic.
Okay, I'm looking forward to that, actually. Make sure you get those guys on the horn.
Absolutely.
All right, we're going to get into draft day losers. We're going to start with rookies, and then we're going to hit veterans. All right, let's get into rookies real quick. Marquise Brown lands in the fantasy hell that is the run-obsessed Ravens. Ugh. They selected Oklahoma wide receiver Marquise Hollywood Brown with the number 25 overall pick in the draft. You think this is a bad break for him?
How does it get any worse? I mean, Lamar Jackson was graded the least accurate quarterback by Pro Football Focus. And if you had a set of eyes, you didn't really need to know their grades because he looked awful throwing the ball all last season. Unsurprisingly, they only passed the ball disgusting 36.3% of the time. That's unheard of. That's less than Tim Tebow was throwing the ball back when he was with the Broncos. So, I mean, obviously, it's all the offseason reports are Jackson's working on his arm and practicing his delivery and blah this and blah that. And he probably can't get much worse than he was last year, but I don't think it's going to be this massive sudden awakening where he becomes this dead pinpoint accurate guy. And Brown just doesn't seem to fit. You look at John Brown, right? The similar type of mold to Marquise Brown in the deep threat and the speed and the big play. John Brown was like the 114th ranked receiver once Lamar Jackson took over. So I can't sit here and say Marquise Hollywood Brown, who's better talent than John Brown should be.
I guess.
We'll find out.
I mean, John Brown's pretty good.
He's not bad, and just so similarly skilled. To see what John Brown did with Lamar Jackson in Greg Roman's scheme in this run-obsessed attack doesn't give me a ton of faith. And this is one of those things where, sure, I love the talent. I agree with the draft scouts that he was the best receiver in this class, but there's so many better spots, like the Steelers, like the Colts, these explosive offenses that had tons of target share up for grabs. To go to the Ravens, yeah, I get it. They had no one there to compete with, but it's just never. The only positive, I will say the one positive here, is I looked a little bit into Greg Roman, and yes, he is run obsessed. In fact, his offenses, all of them have ranked in the top 10 in rush attempts and the bottom 5 in pass attempts every single year except one. He was the 23rd ranked in that year where he had a standout passing year. Ridiculous. But even amidst that, he still had 4 1,000-yard receivers in 6 of his years coaching. Usually it was a big body like an Anquan Bolden, a Michael Crabtree, a Sammy Watkins. Those were the 4 that went over 1,000 yards under Roman. Not the same type as Marquise Brown and not the same type that I think Lamar Jackson could thrive with. But there is that slight glimmer. Either way, though, it's a horrible landing spot.
It's a slight one, though. Slight.
It's just, I mean, I think it's an awful spot. He could have gone so much better and so much higher, and he lands here. It's awful.
All right, along similar lines, the Titans selected Ole Miss wide receiver A.J. Brown with the 51st overall pick in the draft. I mean, maybe not quite the fantasy hell that the Ravens are, but I mean, certainly not any sort of fantasy heaven or fantasy like a coveted landing spot if you're a receiver. Like that sounds like garbage to me too.
No, it's not a great spot at all. I totally agree. I mean, Marcus Mariota, is he a better thrower than Lamar Jackson? Yes, but again, that's as low of a bar as you can possibly set as a starting NFL quarterback right now. And even so, they've been so run-heavy in his 4 years being there. 31st in pass attempts last year, 28th the year before, 28th the year before that, 21st the year before that. So they've been pathetic under Mariota, not trying to unleash this guy, and who can blame him? He's missed time in every single season. He had a career-low 2,528 passing yards and 11 touchdowns last year. Absolutely disgusting. I get that he missed 4 games, but that's still embarrassing. He's never topped 4,000 yards. He's only topped 20 TDs once in his career. So he's been in the digits, 11, 12. It's been pathetic what Mariota. So I get all these Titans fans. They're going to probably all come out of the woodwork and be like, Mariota this. Mariota. How can you justify this guy? He has no track record of staying healthy or being productive. I don't think he's
any good at all.
I mean, I have no faith in Marcus Mariota. And what's worse for A.J. Brown is compared to Marquise Brown, at least Marquise Brown's path to targets is pretty clear. There's no one really in his way. A.J. Brown has Corey Davis, who sucks. We're going to talk about him and his shitty ass
but he's
later.
Like gonna be
but he's still there. He's probably
Absolutely.
going to be the number 1 target there. Delaney Walker is returning from injury. He was the number 1 target for multiple years until he got hurt. And then they signed Adam Humphrey. So it's like, where exactly does A.J. Brown, who, again, I do not want to hate on both of these guys. I love Marquise Brown. I love A.J. Brown's talent. They're both fantastic receivers. Probably my favorite 2 in this class. But landing spot-wise, if I'm looking at a pure fantasy football perspective, I don't think either of them come into much value this year in awful spots like this.
I'm with you, and here's a hot take for you. The Titans are going to suck, and, they're even more than they're going to suck in real life, they're going to suck in fantasy. Yeah. So, and that's my hot take.
Have you seen all the hate we get on YouTube by Titans fans, by the way?
We do, man. And it's like, I guess I appreciate it in the sense that, like, it means people are listening and they're at least like processing what we have to say and stuff like that, and they'll give it back to us. Obviously, we like respond to almost everything people say to us.
Right.
But yeah, people don't care for the Titans hate. But I mean, I don't know, man. Like, why?
What's there
why
to be
would they be
excited
good?
about fantasy wise? Like,
you and me we've gotten behind the Titans before. Like, we were really excited about Exotic Smash Mouth.
Oh yeah, and they were solid that year. I mean, that was like a solid ground game. And you know what, NFL wise, I do pretty much agree with you that they're probably going to suck, but they have a good defense. I like Vrabel. There's things I like about them real life wise, and I love Henry. Too. Like, pound it with Henry.
I like teams I want to hate. Like, I want to hate the Raiders.
And that's yeah, exactly. I like I like Tennessee, but you just brought up another point against AJ Brown is if this offense is going to succeed. When we saw it succeed last year, they were feeding Henry, so it's going to be a run based. Arthur Smith called it an ugly attack. Like he literally comes out and says it's going to be ugly, and we're going to use Henry as our centerpiece. So then they have all these wide receivers competing for a pretty ugly aerial pie right now. None of that looks attractive to me at all.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Other than Derrick Henry. Other than
Derrick Henry, maybe. But, I mean, we've gotten screwed by him before, so we'll see what happens.
Did you hear his quote today? I think you would appreciate this one. Oh, my good God. It was one of my favorite lines. So the interviewer goes, I have to ask you this. What's going through your mind as you get ready to throw that stiff arm? And he just goes, make him pay. Get out of my way. Do you see what's coming at you? What a line. Do you see what's coming at you?
That is good, and that's a Mountain Kyburn.
Right, yeah, exactly. Yeah, Derrick Henry just throwing you to the ground.
Which,
that's
again,
Kyburn.
patent pending.
Yeah, we got to get that one on a meme.
All right, veterans. Sony Michel, as you know, one of the guys the truth has been, struggling with. Am I going to keep this guy? Am I not going to keep this guy? I've gone to every extreme. I've gone to absolutely not. This makes it a little murkier. Sony Michel's fantasy outlook. Oh, murkier. You actually used this.
Yeah, good word choice.
Yeah, Sony Michel's fantasy outlook murkier with running back Damian Harris added. I mean, he was a bell cow for a while.
Yeah, he had 71 carries over 3 playoff games. It's almost 24 a game. He racked up 336 yards and 6 TDs. That's 2 TDs a game. So, I mean, that pace, I think I said it last week, 1,792 yards, 32 touchdowns. Pace was insane. 378 carries too. You knew the Patriots were never going to just give him that style work and that type of workload, especially with his injury concerns. But you think maybe they enter it with a little more clarity that this is the clear-cut guy at the top. And then they go and select Damian Harris, a very solid running back. He outproduced the more heralded Josh Jacobs at Alabama for those years. He's more of that 3-down fit, solid overall skill set. We know Saban and Bill Belichick are boys. And despite not having a clear need at running back, they invested some pretty heavy draft capital to go and get this guy. We talked to Hannibal. That one probably is going to come out after this, but just as a sneak preview, Hannibal said, I wouldn't be shocked to see Damian Harris take the goal line role and let Sony Michel come off the field for that. I could see Sony being more of a 12 carry back, not that like 15 to 20 that we were seeing in the playoffs, because they want to preserve him for the playoffs and let him run then. That's why they took Harris, and especially to have a better insurance policy if Sony goes down again. So all that to me says Sony just clearly back to that gross, like, can you trust the Patriots running back? I always just get whoever's cheapest and hope they get a couple starts in there. And right now it's probably going to be Damian Harris at this point. So Sony takes a massive hit. And Rex Burkhead's just off the picture at this point. But Sony, and that's going to be the biggest hit of like any of these veterans. He was in my top, I'd say like 20-ish. I was ready to take him towards the end of round 2, beginning of round 3. And now he falls to like 60 or so. He takes a massive hit in my opinion.
Yeah, he's not a keeper for me anymore.
No,
I'm now it seems the Hopkins and David Johnson even more solidified. And then I got the first pick of the next round, and so we'll see what happens.
Awesome.
I also got Nick Chubb, so we'll see we'll see.
Oh,
I might be able to find someone better.
Can you keep 3 though?
But I can keep 2, but I get the first pick of the next round.
So you might get Chubb
in effect, keep 3.
Yeah, okay.
If there's, it's going to be a good start to a team, I think, right?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
All right, number 2, Derrius Guice. Man, that guy broke our hearts last year, huh?
Absolutely.
He's recovering slowly, faces more carry competition with Bryce Love. How sad is it going to be if this guy never takes off?
I know. It's too bad because even in that preseason game, which was against the Patriots, so I was watching it very closely, he had a couple runs where he just looked like a monster. He looked like every reason why we were putting him up in our second round, even as a rookie. I thought he was going to have a monster season. And the fact that Adrian Peterson was able to rack up over 1,000 yards and close to 10 touchdowns last year, it makes you wonder what Guice could have done with that type of volume and that type of workload in this offensive scheme that often did seem to like to feed one guy. But now it's Adam Schefter reports he's coming along a little slower. He had 3 additional surgeries after that first one because of knee infections. That's clearly not a positive sign. And then they go and sign Adrian Peterson, who ran, like I said, 1,000 yards last year. So a familiar guy, a little bit of an insurance policy. You're like, that kind of sucks. But by the end of the season, Guice could take over and kind of get AP out of the way. And then they go and draft Bryce Love, who is not far removed from a Heisman-worthy level campaign. Over 2,000 total yards, over 2,000 rushing yards, I should say, 2,118 rushing yards, 19 touchdowns, an FBS record of all time, 13 runs of 50 yards or more. Incredibly explosive, just a beast as a runner. Would have been a first-round pick if he had left for the draft 2 seasons ago. Then he goes and gets hurt his senior year, deals with nagging injury, ankle injuries, gets his knee injury. So he takes a huge hit and falls to round 4 or 5. But if this was 2 seasons ago, he would have been right up there in the first round. So now it's just like, what the hell's going on in this backfield? Plus, you got Chris Thompson, who's going to probably take some receptions as well. Four-headed nightmare, is that what we're looking at? Never a positive. Bryce Love, both of those guys are recovering from ACL, so who knows who's actually going to be healthy when. But to me, it's just a gross situation on an offense that probably is going to be one of the worst in the leagues. Maybe Haskins does like this now that they have Haskins instead of Keenum,
come on.
But
don't talk yourself into them.
I'm not going. Oh, no, I'm certainly not going to. I'm saying there might be a little more room for hope with Haskins there instead of Keenum. But even then, who's he throwing to? They got no receivers. It's just a gross offense. I'm not touching the Redskins this year.
Something to think about that just kind of popped into my head as you were talking about that, three-headed monster, four-headed monster. I mean, we always talk about the dreaded running back committee. Seems to me like we could come up with a clever name for, say, like a four-headed monster. Yeah. Something like that, like a worse committee situation. I don't have anything off the top of my head, but let's consider, possibly, naming like, a 3-back committee, a 4-back committee, stuff like that.
Remember the dog in like Greek mythology, the
Cerberus?
Yeah, that has like the heads that when you cut one off, it comes
so
back.
That's the 3-headed committee. No, I think the Hydra is the thing if you cut its head off.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
But Cerberus is the 3-headed dog that guards hell.
So there you go. It belongs in hell, just like these committees. And then the Hydra is like when you have just so many backs all popping up all
and
over
they're
the
all
place.
You cut one off in like
another gross. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, something to think about, people.
I like it.
All right, number 3, another Todd Gurley red fantasy flag is raised after the Rams trade up for Darrell Henderson. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to make you a little bit uncomfortable if you're a Todd Gurley owner.
Yeah, it was one of those things where you saw how much work they gave C.J. Anderson just applauding. It looked like he was fucking fat as fuck, to be honest, when C.J. Anderson came in last year. He rumbled. He did fine. He played well. But if they're willing to shell out that much work to him, and then you see these highlight clips from behind the scenes of their draft, and Les Snead is like, we need to go get this guy. He gives you a Kamara element. I'm not getting off that. I won't say, if we play against him, we're going to feel it. Snead goes out and says that. So they, despite having very minimal draft capital, trade up, get Darrell Henderson, make sure they go get this guy, again, compared to Alvin Kamara by the owner. And we know Sean McVay loves explosive talents and very creative mindset. Les Snead, even before the draft at the Combine, was saying about Gurley, are we going to give him that same amount of load? Or are we going to lessen it to keep him fresher for the season, for seasons beyond that? If we go that route, we kind of have to have that Batman-Robin combination. You almost hope for a C.J. Anderson as the Robin. You get an explosive guy like Henderson, whose 8.2 yards per carry is a Division I record, the best since 1956. Incredibly explosive, great long speed, tough runner as well, just always churning. And he himself comes out, Henderson, and says, this is the perfect fit. If you watch my college film and you watch the Rams film, it's the same style of offense. This is the best system I could have gone to. Everything worked out great. Everything's clicking with this relationship. I knew it was going to be a perfect fit, and I'm happy to be there. So, I mean, this guy clearly fits this scheme very well. We already had the knee arthritis red flags, and now he's going to have more workload concerns. To me, Gurley, I mean, you probably still take him in the first round because it's just such a historic talent and such an awesome offense. So even if he's only getting, let's say, 60% of the work instead of 80% for what he's gotten in the past, he's still probably going to be worth that first overall rounder. But to me, now he's, I'd probably rather have Joe Mixon. I'd rather have, some of these other guys, these receivers. Maybe
so where is he on your big board right now?
Right now, he's settling in right at like 7. Mixon's up at 6, and Gurley's at 7. But these comments about how much they love Henderson and what this guy could do. I mean, Henderson's probably the best value right now in early best ball drafts. He's fallen beyond round pick 150. I think he's going to have some standalone value plus the handcuff value if he ends up taking over for Gurley. He'd threaten for number 1 overall fantasy player.
Would you rather have Gurley or David Johnson?
Gurley right now,
That's
but
tough, though, right?
It's
tough, though, right?
I wouldn't even considered that question at the end of the season. I would have laughed in your face.
You at the end of the season.
I would have given you probably 2 middle fingers and said, "Never talk to me again," if you had asked that. And now it's a very, very legitimate question, and you could certainly make a case. Johnson's definitely
all the stocks
safe.
going up with Johnson right now. All the stocks going down with
Exactly,
Gurley.
and that's what I'm a little bit wary of. Is like, the Gurley hate's going to boil over so much that he becomes a pretty solid value, because there's those guys that just have everything piled on, and it's all piled on to Gurley. It's just a matter of, is it worth being piled on? Because if it is, then this is going to be a pretty rough season for anyone that invests in Gurley early.
Right, agree. All right, we don't have to talk about this one too much because we kind of talked about this one in a roundabout way when we were talking about the rookie losers. Already overvalued Corey Davis with the Titans to see less looks in the anemic pass game that we referred to earlier. Anything to add beyond what you already said?
Well, I just never understood the love for Davis. I mean, everything here still applies. Not a great quarterback situation, a crowded pass core for a weak aerial pie, but Corey Davis himself. Everyone seems to suck this guy off and find reasons to love him.
Remember when he killed the Patriots that one game?
Oh, yeah, because I dropped him in fantasy, and then my opponent who's facing me picked him up and knocked me out of the playoffs because of that fucking asswipe. Yeah, and the Patriots lost. I fucking hate Corey Davis. Holy shit, I'm about to flip out and break a window real quick. But this is more fantasy-fueled hatred because I own the guy, and he was so maddening. He had 4 big games. He actually only topped 10 points 4 times, and one of them was 160 yards and a touchdown. He was on my bench for that one, of course. He actually had more games under 5 fantasy points, and this is half PPR. You have to be really shitty to get under 5 fantasy points as a top number 1 receiver in your offense to see 112 targets a game, that season, and have under 5 fantasy points 5 different times.
Least favorite type of, and I know this is not a revelation exclusive to us. We've heard. Right. I mean, I've read plenty of good articles about this, but least favorite type of fantasy player to own, one of players like that. Oh, he got me 24 this week. Oh, the next 3 weeks he got me 3, 2, and 5. Right. I hate those guys. You want someone that's going to get you 10 or 11.
Yeah, and I don't mind
sometimes
those.
Give it a high side, but I hate Corey Davis too.
Yeah, and I don't mind it. And this is a new glossary term I'm coming up with. I've called it a jugular player, where it's like a Tyler Lockett or a Tyreek Hill if he was on the field, and you think you're in a battle, and suddenly they score, and they just grab you by the jugular, stomp on your throat, and kill you. But guys like Lockett and them do it so much more often than a Corey Davis, and they come with a decent floor where they at least get you 8 or 9 when they're not getting you those 30-point jugular games. Davis will kill you when he doesn't get those 24, 30-point games.
Oh, yeah.
And he's awful.
And he doesn't get them that much.
No, he doesn't. So how is he going to actually be better this year? So he's the most overrated player in fantasy by far, by a long shot. I have him 50 spots below his ECR and his ADP, and it should be probably even more, especially now that A.J. Brown's there, even more competition. Adam Humphries, Delaney Walker, just disgusting. I don't even want to talk about this.
Another possibility for a player like Jugular, like you're talking about. When you said that, I immediately thought of Mortal Kombat, where they have fatalities.
Yeah, finish.
You know what I mean? When you finish somebody, something like that.
Mortality, yeah, exactly.
Right. I don't know what we would use, but something like that, where it's you're in a battle, and then all of a sudden it's I'm down 30. Mm-hmm. Right. All right. Jordan Howard sinks further into the fantasy abyss. Man, could he sink further? I mean, I kind of thought he was already in up to his neck. He sinks further into the fantasy abyss now behind Miles Sanders. Man, jeez.
Yeah. I know. I mean, when he got traded to the Eagles, you're like, all right, well, at least there's a role here, maybe a big back role, maybe the early down carries. I didn't buy it that much either. And they've always been such a committee-heavy system with Doug Peterson that is whatever. At least he's not with the Bears where they're not going to use him at all. But now they go and get Miles Sanders. They trade up for this guy. Howie Roseman's already gushing that how much they love this guy. They haven't taken a running back since LaShawn McCoy over round 4. And then they go and trade up and get this guy. And he's just raved Howie Roseman about how much he loves him, how he's a 3-down guy that you don't have to take off the field. And he still they always emphasize, we like our committees, we like our situational football. So yeah, sure, I'm sure Jordan Howard might get some goal line touches, but this is going to be a guy that if he doesn't score, he's getting you nothing in fantasy, and he's going to have plenty of those goose eggs where you just want to spit in his face and slap him. He already was doing that last year tons, and now he's going to be in an even more crowded situation. So Jordan Howard, just cross him off your list. Do not touch him. Don't fall for that name this year. Pathetic.
Mike Davis's fantasy value evaporates with David Montgomery's addition. I was a little high on Davis for a while. but I wasn't like, going crazy to get him. But obviously this tempers my expectations quite a bit.
Yeah, it was one of those situations. If he entered the season atop the Bears depth chart, you're going to look at yourself a quality RB2 most likely when Matt Nagy, very strong run game coordinator, loves to pepper his backs with targets. We saw Kareem Hunt lead the league in yardage under him. All these good things about Nagy and his run game. And he was raving about Mike Davis, how he fit the inside gap scheme, all that real well. But then they go get David Montgomery, who's the definition of a tackle breaker, who runs the inside zone as well as anybody I've seen coming out of college. He makes you miss inside the tackle box, is what Nagy cites, and calls him a 3-down back. He says, when you have a guy that can play all 3 downs, it's nice for your play call. It's nice for the offense. We don't have to switch things up. We can be unpredictable because you have no idea what I'm coming at you with. And David Montgomery, great hands, great for the run game that Matt Nagy wants to run. Mike Davis is not going to sniff the field unless David Montgomery gets hurt, or they really just need to give this guy a breather. It's going to be a Tariq Cohen, David Montgomery backfield. There's no scraps here for Mike Davis. That's going to be fantasy relevant.
The already gross Bills backfield becomes the aforementioned 4-headed nightmare.
The Hydra.
Hydra, maybe, Cerebrus plus an extra head growing out of the side of his neck. And obviously this affects LaShawn McCoy, Prince, more than anybody. And I know, and I read this, I knew this, but I actually see you have the numbers here. His yards per carry average has gone from 5.4 to 4.0 to 3.2 over the last season.
Yeah.
And they just picked up Frank Gore, who, good God, Frank, what are you doing?
Just cracking walnuts.
And TJ, yeah, he is right. I mean, he's as well endowed as ever. But still, Frank, come on.
You don't lose that
I
age.
love Frank Gore. I love Frank Gore. I love Shady McCoy too, but come on, man. Neither one of these guys is doing anything here.
No.
I guess, can I fault Gore? Gore just wants it. I mean, he's like, yeah, sure, I'll make $1 million a year, just like running a football.
Sure.
Right. Why not?
Yeah.
Is there anything worth talking about aside the fact that, if you buy into the Bills backfield, you're a moron?
100%. That's really all it was. McCoy didn't do shit when he was the only back there, and now they add Yeldon Gore, and then they draft Devin Singletary, a McCoy clone. The only hope for McCoy right now is he could get traded, he could get cut. I know his cap hit is pretty damn high. They have a lot of cap space, the Bills do, so it's not like they need to cut him, but I wouldn't be shocked to see him moved. Let's say he goes to the Bucs or the Chiefs or something like that, then maybe Shady can have 1 or 2 more solid seasons, but right now, there's no reason to touch this backfield.
Okay, fair enough. Jaylen Samuels, and Yahoo has him listed as a tight end. That's not fair. That's not with regulations.
No.
All right, we fucking hate that guy. Anyway, his handcuff with benefits role now in question with Benny Snell's addition, and a friend of the podcast, Trevor Sikkema, had some stuff to say about Benny Snell, right?
Yeah, a few episodes ago, if you missed that one, Sikkema's interviews are always fantastic, and I asked him, who's your biggest fantasy sleeper? If there's one guy in this draft class that's not getting a ton of press right now, who's the one that blows up and is just a fantasy monster by the end? He said, obviously, it will take a Connor injury or some crazy training camp developments, but Benny Snell, I love the way the Steelers scout. I love that Snell's that hard-nosed, classic Steeler guy, and he's just going to grind it. He's going to be their late-game closer. That's the role he played for all those years at Kentucky. He set all these records, 26 straight starts 27 of his 39 career games, breaks 14 school records, 48 rushing touchdowns over those seasons, and 19 100-yard games. I mean, the guy is just a churning workhorse-style guy. Decent enough hands that if something ever happens, he could play that 3-down role as well. It's just, I love and I like Jaylen Samuels a lot too. So this is just one of those things where he was one of my favorite, right around pick 100, round 10. Get Jaylen Samuels because you might get some receptions. They said they want to work him in more. Plus you get the handcuff. Now that role is much more in question. Now there's no reason to really take Samuels until we know more about who's directly behind Connor. And what do you do with Connor? What if these guys start to work in a little bit more? Snell, though, much more intriguing as a handcuff option at this point.
Nice of Sikkema to answer that question because we had one guy on the pod where you asked him, hey, who would you pick here? And he was like, I don't know. How can you pick between any of these guys?
I'm not in the bold predictions
I'm not in the
business.
Prediction. I know you had me on here to talk about fantasy football and for me to
ESPN,
tell you who I like more than the other guys. But nice of Trevor Sikkema to actually give you an answer. Thanks, Trevor. We'd love to have you back sometime. All right, we're gonna get into a little bit of Game of Thrones if that's okay with you. This is actually a pretty good week of TV, and we had the Survivor finale also. I won't get into that too much. I aspire to do a Survivor podcast for the show.
We will someday for sure. Oh yeah,
I have an awful lot to say.
Yeah,
but let's talk about Game of Thrones because we know it's a little more universal. A lot more people watching that. Man, I'll tell you this. When we watched Game of Thrones last night, me and my lovely wife, who I care for very much, after it ended, she kind of turned to me and she just looked at me and she just goes, "That was whack."
I can't even picture Anna saying that. That's awesome.
Then just like, yeah.
It was awful. It was fucking furious. I think my exact words.
So you thought it sucked, right?
Oh, I fucking hated it. And I remember, I think my words exactly were, well, that was just a fucking colossal waste of my time. I mean, think about how invested, and not only just the time, the emotions, and how like enveloped you get into Westeros and these plots and these schemes, and how well developed the characters had been for so long, and you just had no idea what was going to happen, and then that. Just like, what was the episode? 40 minutes of people just walking? Like. I think we just watched people walk for about 40 minutes.
Here's the best comparison I can come up with off the top of my head. Maybe there's a better one. So it'd be like kind of if Leonardo da Vinci, or no, it'd be like if Michelangelo was sitting here painting the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel and doing, a real bang up job as he did. Say it takes him like 2 years or however many years to finish it. And let's say he finishes like 90% of it, looks great. And then he's like, hey, Nat, how'd you like to finish this up? And I just went up there because I don't know how to paint and was just like, and just kind of slapped some paint on there. And that was the end. That's the best thing. I mean, it was a masterpiece. It was a masterpiece. First, and I'm not, fifth season wasn't a great season, but it was still like Martin's material largely. And it's like through the fifth, even sixth season, I mean, you're talking about some really good shit. And then seventh season, even though there was some appealing stuff that happened, you could just tell things were different. Like, remember, I was complaining about the distances traveled and stuff, even at the beginning. You agreed. At the beginning, it got so much worse. This episode, I felt, was just really, really, really predictable. Like, everything if you had said to me, hey, man, write in an envelope and seal it, what do you think is probably going to happen? I'd have gotten like 80, 90% of this stuff right. I mean, like down to like some very specific things. Like I said to my wife, even when Tyrion was like walking to the end, I was like, I'll bet like this whole arc ends with him seating down his new small council and them like getting down to business and like chuckling and blah. And, then it's going to, and it like the scene went exactly the way I thought. The John Danny thing went exactly the way I thought it was. After it happened and Drogon came up, I turned to my wife and I was like, I'll bet Drogon turns and burns the Iron Throne. Like Drogon understands the symbolism behind the Iron Throne.
Yeah, exactly, right.
He doesn't, he's like unclear about like, I wonder if this guy killed, Danny, Bob. Can't be sure. I wasn't here, but I'll tell you this. That big stack of swords right there symbolizes everything that's wrong with Westeros right now. And I'm going to just blast it with all the dragon fire I got. Like, how smart is he? Is he like genius human intelligence or is he like a smart animal? Because that was a very advanced thing for him to do.
That was awful. Yeah, it's just exactly predictable is a great word for it. And so many loose ends and storylines they started to create. Just what the hell? Jon Snow dies and comes back, and then no one ever explains what the fuck that's about. Like Azor Ahai, this guy we're following around, the prince who's promised. What's that storyline? Did that ever come into fruition? There's just so many things that just are so unsettled, and it was pretty sad when you read fan theories and their way of developing the story was so much richer.
I would have loved to have just a couple like huge Game of Thrones nerds write the last couple seasons. I'd be all about that. Like there's hundreds of them, thousands.
Right. And they're analyzing, Martin's words and what they might symbolize and all this. And it was as basic surface level as you could get. I remember going into this last season being like, Game of Thrones is already the locked-in #1 show. It doesn't really matter what happens here. I don't agree they can't ruin it. It's been that good. And now it's just like, no, it's not. It was that bad of an ending, that bad of a final season that it's not in my top 3 even anymore. And that's so sad to think because it is sad to think. Everything as untouchable as could be. Like it was exactly as untouchable as you could ever picture it without being 100% invincible. Because clearly, at this point, it's not invincible. It's not in my top 3 anymore. It ruins me. You look at a show like Breaking Bad that was just so good throughout and then finished so well. And that's what the worst part is. DB Weiss or whatever the fucking one of those assholes was like. You look at a show. He got asked a question before they even premiered the season 8 season and was like, why did you need 2 years? And he goes, well, with a show like this, you look at a show like Breaking Bad, and you just have to end it perfectly like that. So we needed those 2 years to really plan it out. So this is what you envisioned as the perfect Breaking Bad style, like come full circle ending. Give me a fucking break. It was awful, predictable, useless, just boring. No development of characters anymore. I hated everything about it.
Yeah, I thought it was really stupid. There was one thing that I really enjoyed. Also, by the way, I'm going to talk about another thing I didn't. I mean, how about Tyrion? And you said a lot of it was just walking. I mean, how about Tyrion walking all the way down and just finding the exact spot where Jaime and Cersei are buried, and then like taking off what appeared to be like 6 or 7 brick-sized rocks off them, and then they're fine. It's like, first of all, that probably wouldn't have killed them. I mean, it was just like, what?
If it's 26 bricks, yeah.
I mean, look, it was like bricks like this big.
A little bit of rubble.
He takes them off. He's a dwarf, and he was able to undig them both with his bare hands, pretty
exactly.
quick.
That's probably not going to kill them.
Usually when people get crushed by collapsing buildings, they're getting crushed by like 6
mutilated. Yeah.
Right. But he's like, and he just found that was so dumb. Anyway, the one thing I did really enjoy just visually, and I know everyone's talked about that, is the scene where they came up and Dany stood up in Drogon's wings.
Oh yeah,
that was awesome.
That was dope.
Visually spectacular. That was great. Other than that, I don't have too many kind things to say about it.
I mean, Jon Pet Ghost, but sweet.
The toughest hang in Westeros is now the king.
Yeah,
really?
Exactly.
It's like, Grant, hey, do you what do you think? Would you want to be king? And he can't just be like, yeah, sure, I'll fucking do it. He's like, why do you think I came all this way? Jesus fucking Christ,
You're still a dick. You're still such a little dick.
Come on. By the way, why didn't you just tell us this a month ago?
Yeah, right. We could have been over.
Hey, man, look, all things aside, I think I'd be the best guy for this job. I'm going to do this. I'm going to be a great king for these reasons. But he's just all mysterious.
Right. I still have no idea what the three-eyed raven. What the fuck's the three-eyed raven? I still don't even get what the fuck that means.
Remember what he did in the Battle of Winterfell? He's like, I'm going to warg into 4 or 5 crows and just
fly around. Yeah, just be a bird.
That was his big party trick.
Yeah, exactly. So fucking annoying. And we need a master of whispers. Doesn't Bran know everything that's happening? Why do we need a master of whispers?
Right. I didn't even think about that. He should have just been you know what? That won't be necessary. We can save a little money on that right off the top.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I know everything that's happening, but I still need a master of whispers. I don't know. Fucking everything about it was just awful. I was so disappointed, and I've been so. I don't even know what I would do now with the books if they ever wind down. I want to read them. I want to see what he intended it to be. But is he ever going to even finish these things?
No, he's not. But
this can't be the legacy. This can't be the legacy.
He can't
of Game
feel
of
too
Thrones.
good about this. He can't feel good about this.
No, I want to see him comment. And have you seen? A lot of the actors have been,
the actors didn't like it either. No, you could tell they were yeah, this is garbage. I mean, I'm sure they all made a lot of money, but
did you know that Bran? The one time I've actually liked Bran, the actor, whoever plays him, I forget the guy's name, said there's a quote. I first read the final season and said, this is a joke script, right? And then realized, oh shit, this isn't a joke. So even Bran, the worst character of all time, was this has got to be a joke script, right? I know Kit Harington, who had one word to describe it. He said disappointing. Everybody is
Varys hated it, I know.
Varys has gone off on it.
Well, with good reason. The actor who played Bran, I think his name is Buzz Killington.
Yeah, exactly, right? Fucking loser. It's all you need to name that kid. Oh, but yeah, so I was disappointed.
I see what they're doing as far as a lot of the things they planted at the end. It seems like they're planting the seeds for spinoffs,
right?
Which it's
Arya goes west.
Who's going to write it?
Yeah, exactly.
Am I interested in Arya having adventures? I guess I'm not interested in Arya having adventures written by
DB Weiss.
Yeah, exactly. I don't ever want to see anything those guys do ever again. Yeah, and the sad thing is they made so much money off this. I'm sure they're laughing all the way to the bank.
Absolutely. It doesn't matter. Yeah, this doesn't affect them, but it sucks. It absolutely sucks.
So anyway, sorry to bring you guys down at the end. That's how we both feel. We didn't talk about this beforehand, but it looks like we're very much aligned on the whole Thrones thing.
We talked about fantasy lose.
I will tell you is they did have a great series of commercials before, and one of them heavily featuring Aaron Paul, and then realized it was Westworld season 3. Jesse Pinkman, Breaking Bad, is going to be the star of season 3 of Westworld. So,
I didn't even see that preview.
Oh, it looks really good. It was like, I was like, what's this, man? Jesse's in a show, and then at the very end, it was like he's talking to someone, and it's like it was like a robot, and then it just said Westworld season 3. And
that's pretty sweet.
So
okay,
I was
at least
really
we got
excited.
one positive out of this. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see. See what.
I think that Watchmen show looks pretty interesting too.
I mean, I'm about as big a Watchmen fan as there is in the world of the original source material. So we'll see. I'm definitely going to watch it.
Hell yeah.
I'm a huge Watchmen nerd, so we'll see what happens. All right, man. You got any social media you want to pump before we get out of here?
Yeah, if you want to hear us rave about this is what a depressing episode. People that suck in fantasy, how bad Game of Thrones is.
Loser Fest 2017.
Yeah, exactly. I was gonna say this is. We're usually pretty optimistic, positive people, so don't judge us if this is your first time listening. Or judge us. I don't give a fuck. But you can find me at Roto Street Wolf. You can find the site rotostreetjournal.com and podcast website ffbdpod.com. These are both of our home bases. And you can find the Fantasy Fullback Dive on Instagram, ffbdpod on Twitter, and Roto Street Journal on Instagram and Facebook, and Roto ST Journal on Twitter. All those different channels. And of course, the main important one, if you're listening to this, you probably like podcasts. So if you like what you heard, we're going to pave that path to your 2019 titles all season long. So make sure you hit that subscribe button. Let us know what we can do, what questions you have. Hit us up. We love it here.
All right. My name is Nad the Truth Jones.
And I'm the Wolf. See you guys.
Later. I mean,